Henry and the Flagpole. Outside Henry's forest, there is a Scottish castle. There was soon to be a banquet there. The engines were excited. They had to make sure everything was ready on time. There would be food, games, and bagpipes playing, and the Fat Controller would wear his kilt. Henry loves this route, as on the way he would spot and pass his favorite tree, the tall pine tree, which made him very happy. One day Henry pulled into the Scottish castle pulling trucks full of supplies for the banquet. The Fat Controller was waiting for him. The castle's flagpole is too old. It could fall down and hurt someone at the party, said the Fat Controller. Henry, I need you to collect the new flagpole from the docks in time for the banquet. Yes, sir, said Henry. He knew this was a very important job. Henry shoved into the docks. He couldn't see the flagpole anywhere. He looked high and low, but could not find it. Then Henry saw Cranky. He was so busy saying hello to him that he popped straight into a flatbed truck with the flagpole on it. Whoops! Henry cried as the flagpole rolled off the flatbed and onto the next track. You're not looking where you're going, snapped Cranky. Henry felt very silly. Just then, there was a loud crash. Salty had run over the flagpole. Sorry, Mighty, called Salty. The flagpole's broken, Henry cried. Soon the Fat Controller arrived. He looked very cross. This is a disaster. The Scottish castle will not look the same without its flagpole, he boomed. Henry felt very sad. It was all his fault. That evening, Henry was puffing back through the forest. Maybe seeing the tall pine tree would cheer me up. But not even the tall pine tree could make Henry feel better. Toby was there and saw Henry was sad. I wish I had not broken the flagpole, Henry sighed. Maybe they could make a new one out of one of those tall trees, Toby said, trying to cheer Henry up. Henry was worried. He knew the best one would have been the tall pine tree. He did not want it to be cut down. The next morning, Henry had to take some workmen to the forest. He could see they were carrying axes and swords. Oh no, wished Henry. They must be going to cut down my tall pine tree. Henry was worried. Must save the tree, must save the tree, he said to himself as he made his way towards the forest. Suddenly he had an idea. He would not take the workmen to the forest. Instead, he would look for a new flagpole. The workman noticed he was going the wrong way. This isn't the way to the forest, said one of the workmen. But Henry was not listening. He was looking for a new flagpole. Henry saw some children waving flags, but those flags were much too tiny to have flagpoles. There was a flagpole holding up a windsock at the airfield, but that flagpole was much too short. Then there was a tall flagpole on the beach. It was tall, but not tall enough. Bother, wished Henry sadly. I'll never save the tall pine tree. That evening, the Fat Controller came to see Henry at the sheds. Henry, those workmen had an important job to do. You have caused confusion and delay, he said sternly. Tomorrow you will take coal to the docks. The next day, Henry was at the coaling plant feeling sad. Soon they'll cut down the tall pine tree, and I'll never see it again. James was also at the coaling plant, and Henry explained what had happened. I can't find another flagpole, said Henry. I looked everywhere. Well, look again, James said. Sometimes you may find things in places you never thought of. Henry was not sure, but he knew James could be right, as he set off out to the coaling plant. On the way to the docks, Henry was puffing across the countryside. Where can I look that I wouldn't think of looking, he wondered. He looked around, at the field full of cows, but there's nothing he could see that would make a good flagpole. He then puffed past the orchard, but he only saw Trevor. Hello, Henry, said Trevor. Trevor is very nice, but he wouldn't make a very good flagpole, said Henry. Henry puffed into the docks and saw an old ship with a very tall mast. Suddenly Henry's face brightened up. What about the old ship's mast? He said. Oh, that is going to be used for firewood, Salty said. But it will be perfect for our castle flagpole, Henry said. Henry was excited. At last, he had found a new flagpole, and where he least expected it too. Cranky loaded the ship's mast onto a flatbed truck, and Henry raced towards the forest. He had to get to the tall pine tree before they cut it down. When Henry arrived at the forest, the tall pine tree was still there. He showed the Fat Controller the ship's mast, and he was delighted. So, you won't cut the tall pine tree down? Asked Henry. I would never cut the tall pine tree down, said the Fat Controller. The workmen are here to collect firewood for the roaring fire at the Scottish Castle's banquet. Henry was relieved and happy. That evening the new flagpole was positioned, and the flag was soon hoisted up, and it moved gently in the breeze. It was the nicest thing Henry had seen, except for the tall pine tree.